the way that John teaches as well, he leaves no stone unturned. John really pushes on us that training isn't about winning, it's about developing skills. I don't care about winning in the gym, I just care about winning like on the day that it counts.
For competition prep for, let's say, white belts or just newbies in general, do you have a different approach?
Don't change anything. As you do it more and more, you could start to make adjustments based on your own personal experience.
You notice any different type of pressure now that there's like a much bigger target on your back? Like you're not a dark horse anymore.
Yeah, but like I said, it's all fake. John also says to us is like, you know, to be constantly thinking about jiu-jitsu even when you're not training. I train during the day and then I teach at night. So I'm like doing jiu-jitsu basically from the moment I wake up to the moment that I go to bed. So you can only train for a few hours a day. That's what your body allows. If you think about the sport, you can actually make a lot of progress just thinking about it. As long as your mind is in it, you will get better.
A lot of people in jiu-jitsu, I believe they'll say technique is everything and it's super important, but strength has got to play into it, right?
If your goal is to get stronger for jiu-jitsu, it's good for you to do strength training, but I don't think it should take so much out of you that you're going to take away from your actual training in the gym.
How much time does it take to like really see good progress in jiu-jitsu?
So consistency is the most important thing. More time on the mat is better. The belt is not a good marker for where your skills are at.
All right. Well, for those people that hate when we talk about jiu-jitsu, welcome to today's show, Giancarlo.
Should be fun.
Appreciate you being here, and that was fun, getting in a workout.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Meathead session. You like training like that?
Yeah, I love training like that. Most of the time when I go to the gym these days, it's kind of like stuff like that. I'm trying different things, just trying to, you know, mess around, not go crazy. I'm not trying to like PR anymore. Even though we did a pretty intense workout, like I felt like that was just like right up my alley in terms of like what I would like to do.
Yeah, not so much damage that you not going to be able to recover from it or anything too crazy. But yeah, we did a lot of chest. We did some bench pressing and stuff like that. Got to use the slingshot. Have you found, you know, a lot of people in jiu-jitsu, I believe they'll say that technique is kind of everything and it's super important, but strength has got to play into it to some degree, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so there's kind of everybody, you know, once you get up to a certain level, like everybody's going to be tough and strong. And so in that element, technique is king, in my opinion. But when you match somebody who you're equal in terms of skill level, in theory, the stronger person should win in that. So if you've got somebody, I guess somebody that's, you know, your same experience level, size, and technique level, in theory, if you have a strength advantage, you should win. And so it definitely plays a factor, especially in like the professional realm of like jiu-jitsu as a sport. Strength is always going to be relevant.
Do you think of like any sports specific stuff necessarily? Like, are you thinking, you know, if I do this movement, maybe it could help me get out of this position, or if I strengthen these muscles, maybe it would help? Or do you not really mess around with anything like that?
I've gone back and forth over the years with that. These days, I tend to find that the most sport specific thing you can do in terms of improving performance is the sport itself. But strength, especially the way that we like worked out today, or you know, some people like, you know, more bodybuilding style or like CrossFit or whatever the case is, you're gonna develop some degree of general strength. And so if you can improve upon like different pushing and pulling movements and driving movements and you know, your strength through like different planes of motion, I think it will ultimately benefit you, provided that it doesn't take away from your, you know, actual skill development in the sport itself. So these days when I do strength and conditioning and lifting, I was talking to your brother a little bit about it before, but like I think up to a certain degree of strength in the gym is going to help you. And then trying to push for like going from like, you know, a 350 bench to like, you know, 375 is going to have diminishing returns on my performance on the mat. Although I am technically getting stronger in that lift, I'm just getting stronger in that specific lift. Whereas you're not going to feel a difference if you and I roll. You're not going to be like, oh, now that his lift is 375 instead of 350, that he's that much stronger when we grapple, if that makes sense.
But if you go to do a squat and 225 kind of folds you up like an accordion,
yeah,
and you work on your squat just because you're not proficient at it, then maybe I would notice a difference.
Yes, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So
what about reps though? Like what if you can hit that 350 for, I don't know, a couple more reps?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can't hurt, like, you know, but for me in particular, like so there was a while where I was really working on my deadlift, and I wanted to get a 500 deadlift. Like that was just like my own like ego. I was like, I need to get a 500
You
deadlift.
got long ass arms over here.
Yeah, so that I was always like, I always favored deadlift in the gym over like squatting and bench pressing when I was doing like more powerlifting style training. And so I was able to get 515. That was my heaviest one, and you know, I just felt like, okay, that was really hard. And then when I hit that, I remember for like the next month, I was so taxed that like my, you know, training was just like terrible. I was just like, I could not respond to everything. Like, you know, it was a pretty heavy lift for me. And I just felt like, okay, do I really need to get my deadlift to 600, or can I maintain this strength and still be, you know, feel strong to everybody, even if they're able to maybe even lift heavier than me, and then just be more technical. So I do want to be strong. I don't think that you should, you know, completely neglect it. But I got to the point where I was like, I think I'm more in like a maintenance phase in terms of like my strength and muscle mass and like size. I stopped trying to like necessarily get stronger in particular lifts, and now I just kind of try different things in the gym that challenge me without necessarily trying to go for that like, you know, next number.
A lot of grapplers start out and they start only grappling. When they don't have any strength training background, they haven't built much muscle. So what would your advice to be for someone who wants to really get good at grappling, but they don't want their training to, I guess, take away from their progress on the mat, but they do have to get strong?
It's hard to say because there's different like theories on that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say trying as many things as you can, so you're not just fixated in like one particular like rep range or one particular modality, because if I just try to stick to, you know, 5x5, for example, like you're going to get really good at that, but then, you know, you're neglecting like different areas of training or whatever training modality you choose to go into. And ultimately, like if your goal is to get stronger for jiu-jitsu, it's good for you to do strength training, but I don't think it should take so much out of you that it's gonna take away from your actual training in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, you know, just doing like basic stuff and then building upon that. So like you could do like basic lifts. You can work on, you know, different rep ranges. Maybe you start off with like 5x5, for example. You work on your bench, you work on like an overhead press, you work on those basic movements, and then just adding like maybe some accessory work behind that. And then, you know, that should be enough. And then once you feel like, and you know, especially when you're just starting off, like you'll notice like that the gains that you make in the beginning are always going to be the biggest ones, and then like when you're trying to put on those extra like 2 pounds after you've been lifting for like 5 or 10 years or whatever the case is, that's like really hard. Mm-hmm. And so I think once you can build up like once you can get past that like first, I guess, year of gains in strength and size and muscle mass or whatever your goals are, which is important too, like it depends upon your goal. Like what you're trying to do. Are you trying to gain mass? Are you trying to, I think once you do that, if your goal is jiu-jitsu, just maintaining that and just making small incremental adjustments to your training to where you're still challenging yourself in the gym is kind of the best way to go. That's kind of at least where I'm at now.
Gotcha.
How much time does it take to like really see good progress in jiu-jitsu? We talking about like 3 times a week or?
Consistency is the most important thing. So at least as long as you're going, if you can only make it 3 times a week, that's what your life allows you. You're going to see results as long as you stay consistent 3 times a week. It's not like you're on for like, you know, 6 weeks and then you're off for 3 weeks. Then obviously you're going to backtrack. But so consistency is the most important thing. More time on the mat is better overall. But it also depends on the individual because, you know, somebody who, you know, I teach beginners all the time. And so I get beginners that, you know, have been training for 3 months, but the kid's 16 years old and he's played sports all his life. This kid gets good fast. Yeah. Whereas, you know, I have, you know, a 38-year-old dad who, you know, sits all day on a 9 to 5 and he only gets to train 4 days a week. Even if the 16-year-old also trains 4 days a week, you're going to tend to see, for the most part, that the progression's a little faster. You know, the younger that they are, they tend to respond quicker to movements, and I tend to relate that to, you know, one, like how active they are and how active, you know, the 30 they've been their whole life, but also, you know, how many movements have you actually learned in your 16 years of life as opposed to your 38 years of life, and how much of that movement have you accommodated your body to? Is it your body just used to doing?
You know, with your personal progress, and everyone should probably check out the documentary Becoming Dangerous that Flo made. It was fucking awesome. But Gordon, in a segment, he said that the 1 year that you guys trained together when you came and started training with Danaher, that he thinks you progressed more in that 1 year than your whole span of training. Do you know what he meant by that? And do you feel that, like, just because of that training setting, it just vastly improved your jiu-jitsu, because you already had really good jiu-jitsu at that point?
Yeah, I've been training jiu-jitsu a long time. I think there's a couple of factors to that. There's one is that I was fully immersed in no-gi, whereas up until that point, I would say 80 to 90% of what I did was gi. So like when I started training jiu-jitsu, we only had one no-gi class a week in my academy. Gotcha. And, you know, the rest of the other days I was only training in the gi. And then, you know, in the last couple of years, I've been trying to focus more on no-gi, competing more. More so when I was a black belt, I started to transition a little more to no-gi.
And how many years do you think that's been?
So I've been a black belt for 2.5, 3 years, I think.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly when I feel like that should be like a date that I remember, but yeah, but so I feel like, you know, the last couple of years, I think it might have been just because like the way that the sport was progressing, you know, there was a lot more of this seemed like no-gi was just trending a lot more, and it just seemed like there was more opportunities in that area. And for whatever reason, even when I was training mostly gi, I would seemingly do a little bit better in no-gi tournaments. I don't know if I just put less pressure on myself. I was, you know, training it less, so I was like, whatever, let's just see what happens. But for whatever reason, like even as a brown and early black belt, I like medaled or performed better at no-gi tournaments. And then once you know, there was like this big like uproar in no-gi, and you know, ADCC was starting to get a lot of hype behind it. I put in my mind that I was going to do the trials, and that was what I was going to focus on. Yeah. And so at that time, I was training by myself. I was teaching in Massachusetts at Bernardo Faria School. And so what I would do was I would teach in the evenings, and I would get a small group of my students, and we would go upstairs. There was like an upstairs mat area, and I would take like 7 or 8 guys, and I would teach them, and then I would grapple with them. And that was like my training camp for, you know, however many months prior to the trials. And then 3 weeks before the trials is when I finally actually like moved to Austin. So I was able to kind of like put the finishing touches on, you know, tactics and stuff like that. And then, you know, I was able to like win the trials. But in terms of like that year, I think that because I had fully immersed myself into no-gi, I was learning a lot of new skills and a lot of holes in my game that I had because I hadn't come from that no-gi background. Even though I trained no-gi here and there, it wasn't like, you know, once you're fully immersed in it, you do realize that they are different sports. It's like wrestling and judo, you know? So there is a tons of similarities to them. It's still jiu-jitsu at the end of the day. It's another facet of jiu-jitsu, but like a lot of like the things that you can do in the gi in terms of takedowns, in terms of, you know, submissions, like the whole leg lock game changes everything, the whole wrestling aspect. There's submissions that you just can't do in no-gi that you can do in gi. So you have to specialize in certain, you know, moves, things like that. Friction versus less friction, sweat. There's so many different things that change the way that you approach the game that I was really able to hone in on like that specific facet of my jiu-jitsu, which made me go from a good no-gi submission grappler to like a great no-gi submission grappler, where I was able to really just like fill in all those gaps and just round out my game. And I'm still, you know, there's still a bunch of different skills that I personally want to improve upon. Yeah. And that I still feel that I'm not as good at, you know, that I can be. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I think, you know, played a factor. And also, you know, I was a student full-time. I was just a full-time student. Like I was showing up to class every day. I wasn't teaching. I was just taking classes from, you know, the best coach that you could ask for. So, you know, it's all those pieces of the puzzle make it relevant.
Did the black belt not matter to you that much? Is that partly why you don't remember? And did you also go to practice like the next day, the day after you may have gotten your belt?
Yeah. So for whatever, I spent like quite a while at my purple belt because I was moving. So I moved from my home gym to a different state, and I had moved around for like about 2 years to a couple different places. And so I never got belted at purple belt. And that was kind of the beginning of where I started to decide that I wanted to be a full-time competitor, even with like everybody's goal is like, okay, I want to be a world champion, but like, what does that really mean? You know, like what does that entail? And I was still figuring that out, but I knew I wanted to be, you know, I wanted to pursue jiu-jitsu competitively at that point. And so trained at a couple different places. And then I ultimately ended up in, you know, in North Carolina, that's where I ended up getting my black belt under Lucas Lepre. And for whatever reason, when I was, you know, coming up through the ranks, like a black belt was very important to me. I was like, okay, I'm going to get my black belt. Like that was important to me. And as time went on and I spent like a few years like not getting belted, I just stopped worrying about like the belt that's like on my waist. I just felt like it was irrelevant. And the only reason why at that point in my, like when I was a competitor or when I was, you know, starting to pursue competitive jiu-jitsu, that the belt was important to me was because I wanted to compete at a black belt level against the guys that I was watching, you know? So that was the only reason.
Like entry into going against the very best.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So I would watch, you know, a world championship or an ADCC. ADCC doesn't have belts, but like worlds at the time when I was, you know, training in the gi, you know, and I would see those guys and I'm like, okay, one day I'm going to compete, you know, on that level with those guys. And, but really like the skill, the belt is not, you know, a good marker for where your skills are at. And so for me now and in that time, I started to drift less towards the belt and more towards how good am I actually. And so that's why I think like when I got my black belt, it was a little bit more cold than any of the other belts. Like every other belt, I was like, yeah, I got my belt. Like that means like something, but you're no different than you were 5 seconds before you got the belt. Like, so that's kind of like how I started to approach it, and I try to like emphasize that to my students that yes, you are going to get belted at some point, but that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be your own personal development.
Yeah. You mentioned watching a lot of athletes, like the guys that you wanted to compete against. How did you make that transition into becoming that person? Because that was another big part of that documentary, that your belief in yourself as an athlete, knowing that you had those skills to compete against those people. When do you think you started to recognize that you are also at that level and you can compete at that level? And these guys that you may have been watching for years, they're not your idols anymore. They're your competition.
Yeah. I think when I started competing as a black belt, my first ever black belt tournament was Pan Am's. That was when I had my first match against Hulk, and you know, we started kind of that rivalry.
Yeah.
And I would compete against. I mean, this is kind of like the story throughout a lot of my career, but particularly at black belt, like I would compete against guys that were, you know, good or had been black belts for a while, or you know, Hulk at that time had already won worlds and done all these things, and like I always had these like narrow matches, and I was like, every time I would walk off the mat, I'd be like, okay, I lost that match by like 2 points. Nothing. He didn't really do anything to me. And I would always question myself, and I'd be like, man, if I would have just like opened up more and like tried something, like he wouldn't have been able to, like I would have been able to win that match. So I always felt like it was on me. It wasn't on the other guy. And so that started to shift the way that I trained and the way that I, you know, approached, you know, training and competing.
How?
I would just make so previously I started to think about like I would go into tournaments with the intention of just winning. Like I was like, okay, I need to go out there and I need to win. I need to come home with a gold medal. But what happens from the first second that you step on the mat and to the gold medal, there's a whole lot that happens in between. And so what I started to realize, and my coach who at the time who gave me my brown and black belt, Lucas Lepre, he helped me understand this. And John also helped me understand this as well, which was what matters isn't winning. Winning is just a byproduct of how you perform. And so if your goal, if your focus is, everything's about what you focus on. So if you're focused on winning, and more specifically, if you're focused on not losing, that's another thing that's important is like I was worried about losing to a guy, and then I was okay, let me think about winning. But it shouldn't be the result that you're focused on, or that you're focused on. You should focus on the performance. And if you perform well, and you perform the way that you know that you can, and that you train for, and the way that you do every day in the gym, then the result will almost certainly be a byproduct of that performance. And that's kind of like how I started to shift my focus in tournaments. And it's always going to be a battle. You know, your mind is never your friend, especially in moments like that. And so for me, I just try to put my focus on the things that I do every single day in the gym, and just try to replicate those things in the tournament, independent of the stage that I'm on or who I'm competing against or whatever it is. Like I ultimately, the most important thing is that I perform.
Yeah, we were talking in the gym about powerlifting a little bit, and I was saying how, you know, the biggest squat in the gym, the biggest bench in the gym, and the biggest deadlift in the gym, none of those are owned by me, but I do have the biggest total.
Yeah.
And I talked about how you can, you know, how you take pride in trying to piece together that total as a powerlifter. It's the main thing that you're after. And I think some of what you're pointing out here is like a guy might be able to get you in this or that. He might be able to beat you in this area or that area. But can he actually, is he going to take the risks necessary to kind of go all out and not play to lose?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not playing to lose, you know, like playing to like progress and to win ultimately. But like that's why we were talking about that, and I was talking about like the positional sparring that we do. It's like any position that I get into, I know that I have an answer or should have an answer. And so that's what the training is for. And that's why, like, even if I get into a match and I get in a bad spot, like, you know, I did it at one point in this match, I'm like pretty relaxed and like comfortable, because I just focus on what's happening at this very moment. Like I try not to get into a state of like, oh fuck, this guy got my back, like it's over, like, or I'm in a terrible position, like everybody's watching me, like, you know, I might lose this match. Now you're starting to drift and your mind's going to play tricks on you like that. But if you can narrow that focus to what's important at this very second, that's what, in my opinion, I think is going to count the most.
Maybe change your interpretation of what maybe there are no bad positions.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you know what to do, like there are really no bad positions. I mean, there's definitely favorable positions, scoring positions that you want to be in, but like, you know, ultimately, this is one thing that John really helped me understand. It's like what makes you win, like your knowledge. It's all about what you know. So if you're in a position and you don't know what to do, you're not going to have the answer. You're just going to react, you know, and you're going to go off of instinct, and that's not always going to be the case. But if you know what to do, you're going to respond accordingly.
You know, how do you guys calm yourself down? Like watching this match, like this seems like you get in such compromised positions.
Yeah.
Any of you guys can answer this, but like, how do you tell yourself that you're like, okay?
Yeah, like
so it looks like you're not okay sometimes.
that particular move, like I had trained that escape multiple times. So like that's, you know, just one of like a few escapes that you can do from that position. So again, it like comes down to like what you know and your understanding of like of the game that you're playing, right?
I hear a lot of people mention, like, when I first started like listening to Andre Gracie stuff a few years ago, one thing that he mentioned is that he did a lot of positional training, and he also mentioned that like none of his training partners were at his level, and that kind of surprised me, you know, because like he's so fucking great. But he said he never watched the matches of his opponents that he was going to compete against, and I wonder, because I actually heard John mention that like you guys had game plans for people. Obviously, you're going to play your own game, but some people purposefully do not watch tape from people they're going to compete against. What do you think of that strategy? Do you think, obviously you want to play your game, but what are your thoughts on that?
I've never personally, I mean, I don't want to say I've never done it, but I, for the most part, don't watch other people's tape. I watch a lot of my own tape, and we do tape study with John pretty frequently, where sometimes it's like spur of the moment. He'll just bring up matches that we should watch. They could be jiu-jitsu matches. They could be particular moves from, like wrestling matches or whatever he's studying. And I do definitely watch a lot of my own footage, but I almost never watch. And there was a period where I was like starting to watch like my opponent. Like I would go into a tournament and see, okay, there's this so-and-so is in my division. Maybe I should watch his match. I never felt like it helped me, so I was just like, whatever, I'll just focus on myself. I don't really care what he's going to do.
Yeah.
If like, again, it all comes down to like, if I have the answer, regardless of what they're doing, and the way that we train and we do like positional rounds and, like a lot of, the way that John teaches as well is like he leaves no stone unturned. Yeah. He's like very, very thorough. And so that prepares us for like, all situations. And, to touch on like what you said about Hajer, like I would say 80% of my training is against people that, are either smaller than me or maybe less experienced than me or whatever the case is, because I'm trying to develop skills. And the closer we get to tournaments, that's when I'll start ramping up the intensity and trying to go against the tougher guys in the room, because that's when I need to like get used to going hard or get used to, trying a move and having it fail and having a guy counter me and put me in a bad spot, and just be able to practice the tactics required to get to good positions, but also the, the calmness of like being in a bad, I'm going to go against, Gordon or whoever, like you're going to get put in shitty positions. It's just, when you're going against the best guys in the room. But I don't want to go, I would say that would be about 20% of the time, and that closer to competition.
Train with them?
Yes.
Really?
And then closer to competition more often, and then less often when I'm either far away from a tournament and I'm focused just on skill development. I'm trying to practice a new move. I'm trying to work on a particular tactic to get to a position that I want to. I have to practice it against people that I know I can, almost like rep things out on, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, it's going to be hard to hit a move for the first time on the best guy in the room.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
That makes me really like, so, obviously there's like Gordon, there's Marigali, there's all these fucking Dan, Big Dan, all those guys in that room, right? I don't know if they're in the room every time when you guys train or whatever, but so when you're saying when you're getting closer to a competition, you will roll with them more, but when you're outside of competition, most of your rolls are with people that you can just work technique on, that like you can work that on?
Yeah, I mean, I still roll with those guys, but it'll be definitely like less intense.
Okay.
And for the most part, yeah, when I'm trying to work on technique, I'm trying to work on a new skills, like skill development, I'm trying to do it against some of the lower level guys in the room or the less experienced guys in the room.
Gotcha.
So that I can practice that move and feel like I really get a knack for it. And then as you feel like, okay, I'm getting better at this move, you increase the level of the opponent, and you increase the level of the opponent, work on it for a bit, increase the level of the opponent until ultimately, hopefully you get to a level with that move that you can hit it on the best guy in the room. It's not always the case, but at least you have that, you've developed that skill in your repertoire. And when a match comes, there might be a time where you need to pull that move out, and you've sharpened that tool, and you just have another, skill in your skill set.
Gotcha.
It's so interesting because it appears that almost all learning kind of works very similar.
Yeah.
And all progress and adaptation, it seems to work very similar. Obviously, like you can throttle stuff and you can go you can go nuts on things, and you can go into a full sprint if you want to be faster. And there's a lot of different ways to get to the same road. But it appears with jiu-jitsu, wrestling, lifting, running, it appears that you have to be able to think about what it is that you're doing kind of while you're doing it, and therefore the percentage must be reduced significantly. One of the things I wrote about in a book I published years ago called Jacked and Tan, explaining some of my like training methods, was I would oftentimes at the end of a workout use a very, very lightweight 30 or 40% of your max, and I would just do practice reps. And it's actually really interesting. In powerlifting and bodybuilding, you don't really hear people talk about practice reps. They do it in Olympic lifting a little bit, but it's rare for people to really practice, break it down, try it barefoot, try it with different shoes. Now, if you're going to go and do all that, and you're going to have Olympic shoes on versus flat shoes versus no shoes, it'd be a giant mistake to do that with 90% of your max or 100% of your max. You could really end up hurting yourself. So a lot of what you're saying makes a lot of sense. The training is only as good as your recovery. And I imagine if you're rolling with these monsters, while it might feel great to go all out and to go intense, you do that for a handful of days in a row.
Yeah.
And you're probably just all wearing it.
At a certain point, you can only keep up physically, to a certain degree. And like, John really pushes on us that training isn't about winning, it's about developing skills. And it only matters to win on the day that it counts. And so I don't care. Like, I tap all the time in the gym, like sometimes I tell people that and they're like, are you like, yeah, we're like letting ourselves get put into submission holds and practicing escaping them, or, sometimes you just get caught in a move. Like, it is what it is. Like, who cares? So who cares if the guy passes my guard? Like, just fucking start again. It's just training, you know what I mean? It just matters. Like, GSP.
That's all I got, bro.
GSP used to say that. GSP used to say that all the time. And he was like, he would go into different areas of martial arts, Muay Thai, BJJ, or whatever. And he would go against the best guys because he knew he would never be able to keep up with them. But when he would step in the cage, that was when it mattered to win. And so, that's really all that matters. Like, you have to win on the day. It doesn't matter winning. Like, being the gym champion, isn't like, unless you're, if that's what you want, like, that's fine. But like, for me personally, I don't care about winning in the gym. I just care about winning like on the day that it counts.
When did you realize that? Because how long did it take you to realize that like you shouldn't try, like you should allow yourself to get in those positions in training?
I think it wasn't like a specific moment. I think just over time you start to mature and start to realize that. When I first met John and I was training at Bernardo's, I was, I only had my students to train. There wasn't a ton of people. Yeah. And at that point, Bernardo was like already retired, and he was barely training, maybe once or twice a week. And so I would frequently have conversations with John. We'd talk about technique and training and stuff like that. And then that was one thing that he, told me. He was like, you only have to go hard like 1 or 2 days a week. And, maybe you increase that a little bit more when you get closer to a competition. But for the most part, you should be training with your guys, letting them mount you, practice escaping, let them, you pass their guard, you let them re-guard, you pass again, you let them extend your arm in an arm bar, and you practice getting out. And if you tap, who cares? You know what you have to work on now, and so that's kind of like nowadays I only approach training that way, and I feel like that's allowed me to progress a lot faster in the last few years than before. And especially like when you're starting something, you can pretty much do anything and get good, but it's adding those extra 2 pounds to your max. Like that. Yeah. You got to do very specific things to get that number up. And same thing with skills.
We'll never stop talking to you guys about how important your sleep quality is and how it can help speed up your health and fitness, your fat loss, your life goals. That's why we've been partnered with and sleeping on 8 Sleep mattresses for so long now. And right now is one of the best times you can get yourself the Pod Pro cover or the Pod Pro mattress because they're having their Memorial Day sale. So 8 Sleep mattresses have amazing technology to cool down your bed as low as 55 degrees. Your side can be a certain temperature, your partner's side can be a certain temperature, and they also have an app that allows you to see your heart rate variability, your heart rate, your tosses and turns, all of these different metrics to help improve your sleep night by night. It is literally the Tesla of beds. And our sleep has been transformed because of it. We and myself used to wake up in a puddle of our own sweat, and now with the 8 Sleep mattress every single night is blissful. Head to 8sleep.com/powerproject for exclusive Memorial Day savings on the Pod Pro cover or the Pod Pro mattress through June 6th. Stay cool this summer with 8 Sleep, shipping the US, Canada, and all those good places. Link in the description down below. What I'm curious about this real quick. How many days a week do you train? Every day?
Yeah, every day.
And how many sessions a day?
So Monday through Friday, we do a morning session and then an afternoon session. That's just my personal training. And then Saturdays and Sundays, it's just one session.
Now, the thing is like there's so much frequency there, but I'm assuming with everything you've just mentioned, you're throttling your intensity from session to session. Yeah. Because it sounds like a lot, but like certain sessions, you're kind of flowing and you're not killing yourself, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's a lot of drills, so you're doing a lot of drilling. So that takes a lot of impact away from the rolling, and like the positional sparring is also like you're not starting in a neutral position and trying to wrestle the guy for 30 minutes straight. You're starting in a mount and you're like playing in the position. So there's a lot of playfulness in the way that you
How
train.
cute.
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to take something violent and make it playful.
Doesn't look playful.
But that's kind of like, especially when I'm trying to work on stuff, or if I need to get like a lighter session, I just try to flow a little bit more. But I'm constantly moving, so I'm still getting a workout. Just take a little bit of the impact away from the, and a little bit of the intensity off, so that I can at least do multiple sessions and train every day.
You went to the best trainer in the world. You went to the most intense gym in the world, or maybe it appears that it's the most intense gym, and maybe it's maybe they just train really well. But when he told you like one time a week, were you kind of like, I mean, obviously he's the guy to go to, right? John Danaher is the guy to go to, so you're going to listen to him. But at first, were you like, that can't be it?
I was
to back way off. That can't be it.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like, it made sense the way that he put it, and once you develop skills, he gave me this analogy that was really insightful, which was like, if you take a bicycle, like you flip a bicycle upside down, you take the tire, you start spinning it. At the beginning, it's going to be hard to spin, but once you get it going, you can barely flick it, and you can keep it at that speed for a long time. And so maintaining skills is a lot easier than developing skills. And so you just got to keep sharpening it every so often. And it's, again, it goes back to like the consistency is the most important thing. If you could train like the way that we train allows us to win with training volume as opposed to training intensity. So you get more volume over time of training, more time spent in every position than anybody else. And so that's, I think, like, I mean, I know for a fact that it's the best way to train because, I mean, I've just seen the results, not just in myself, but in other people. And so I definitely feel best training this way. I mean, training every day, no matter what, at some point, like, you're going to fatigue, you're going to be tired, you're going to feel beat up or whatever the case is.
Pretty much what you guys do is train every day-ish?
Yeah. And like, he doesn't 100% enforce that on everybody. It's not like you have to fucking train every single day, but like, he's there every day, and you want to be a champion, and so you can't like, just I at least feel like I'm obligated to train every day, and like, I have always put that pressure on myself. I've always enjoyed training a lot, and so if I'm in the gym every day, even if I'm not doing a very intense session, at least I'm there, at least I'm learning something, and at least I'm moving my body and I'm staying consistent. Like, that's the most important thing for me.
What happens if you miss a day? Like, do you feel like somebody starts talking about something that, like, you're here, right? You're not there. And when you go back, like, someone has like discoveries and different things, like, oh, we were working on this. Like, why do you feel like you missed out on a lot sometimes? Yeah,
sometimes. I mean, there's definitely been times where that's happened, where I've like traveled for like a week or two, and then when I come back, I'll be like, wait, what have you guys been working on? He's like showing something that he's never taught me before. I'm like, fuck, like, but it's just like, it is what it is these days. Like, again, like, as long as I'm consistent, if I take a day off or I lose, a week because I'm traveling or whatever the case is, so as long as I'm coming back and I'm just rebuilding back into that normal routine, like, again, it's that training volume over time that I think is going to make the most difference.
Seeing some of your matches over the last couple of weeks, trying to follow along with what you're doing, it appears that you are really good at, I guess, I don't even know some of the terms, but like using your legs and getting people like in a body lock. Like that guy right there, just that match that you just did, just seemed unbelievable the way you're able to control the guy. Is that something that you, like, do you spend a lot of time on that, or does that come natural to you? Or
the body triangle, like when I'm behind him, that seems to come natural to me. I mean, it just depends on who you're going against. Obviously, if I'm going against somebody who's really big, it's hard to lock it. But it's definitely from that position.
That looks like it sucks, especially with your arms stretched over your head.
Yeah, it's terrible. And you have
That's
like
how guys get their ribs fucking popped, bro.
Yeah,
it sucks.
It's like
it doesn't. As like someone who doesn't know what's going on, it doesn't look like much.
Yeah,
but that is massively painful.
Yeah, that's probably the most controlling position you can be in. You control like your training partner's whole body. You have closed wedges around their hips, and you're behind them. So, yeah, it's definitely, in my opinion, the best way that you can control somebody from the back would be using that body triangle.
Do you have a wrestling background?
No, No, I wish I had wrestled in
It looks like you do.
I definitely like to wrestle, and I feel very confident in standing position. But I don't have like a background. I never wrestled in like elementary school or high school or anything like that. I always enjoyed standing position, wrestling and judo. And John teaches a lot of wrestling, and he's very knowledgeable. So, we're able to pick things up relatively quickly. And he has us go through phases of like learning different things. But yeah, he emphasizes a lot of the standing position in training. So we do that every day pretty much.
If someone is trying to get into competing a lot and they do want that to happen, but let's say that maybe they don't have crazy high level training partners, right? You mentioned something really amazing about how you train every day, but it's not like you're going intense every day. I think a lot of people, when they hear someone like you mention they train every day, they expect you to be going 100% all the time. So stretching your intensity makes a lot of sense. But what are some other things that you see guys who train, they're just concepts that are messing up with the way that they're trying to train and the level they're trying to get to?
I definitely think that are you referring to somebody who's never competed before who wants to compete, or somebody who competes regularly?
Let's say that they have a goal of trying to increase their level and compete regularly.
Okay. I think the most important thing for at least for me, what makes the most difference in terms of my performing in competition is competing also at a relatively consistent frequency where I'm not taking too many breaks between tournaments, because that way, one, I'm always training for something.
Yeah.
Two, I have the result of the previous tournament to kind of study and see, okay, what can I improve upon from this one to the next one? So competing regularly for me is important, whether that's once a month, once every 2 months, once every 2 weeks, or whatever frequency you want. Everybody's a little bit different. So that's important. And I think that you can learn a lot from watching your own matches. So if you've competed and you see that there's a certain, maybe you're losing in a particular way more so than others, you can learn a lot from your own matches as to what you have to work on. For me, that's why I almost only watch my own matches, or, I occasionally watch other people's matches, my teammates or whatever the case is. But for the most part, when I actually want to go back and watch an old match, I usually watch my own matches so I can see what it is that I've improved upon or what it is that I need to improve upon, and go and implement that in the training room. So you can learn a lot from watching your own matches. And in a relatively short amount of time, a lot of times it's a simple strategy that you just messed up on in your previous match that cost you the match. The guy got a takedown on you, and that was it, or whatever. It could be anything. It could be a very minor adjustment that you can immediately implement, and then boom, you go into the next tournament, and just because you fixed that one little thing, that could increase your performance. So when you get into competition, like, there's a lot of variables outside of like technique. There's like the rule set and the time, and so there's a lot of different things, the style of the opponent, etc., strategies. And so that's why I like to watch my own matches, because I'm in the gym every single day, I'm working on technique, but I can watch my tournaments and see, okay, how can I improve upon this strategy, or what's a different strategy that I could have taken that I can go in and implement when we're doing live rounds. Like, that's kind of like when you can practice those strategies.
Do you also record your training, or no?
No, usually not. No, I don't think I've ever recorded it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I just don't do it.
Gotcha.
What about what are some things that you may have copied or kind of took note of, observed from teammates when you first got to train with John Danaher, where you're like, okay, this is how, like, was there anything that kind of surprised you when you saw maybe how they trained, or maybe even just how they acted in between? Like, oh shit, that guy, he eats his food right away. Like when he's done with his morning practice, like, I need to implement that. Were there any habits or anything that you saw from people where you're like, I think I need to take that for myself?
I definitely find that I do learn a lot from my teammates in terms of techniques and stuff like that. Rolling with them, just picking up on stuff that they do when they roll, or if I watch them roll, and then just asking questions, and we do that quite a bit, like go back and forth with technique and questions in our gym. But one thing that I did find is that, and I was familiar with the training because I had cross-trained with John and those guys before I actually joined a few times. So I kind of knew what the training structure was like, and I was familiar with it, and knew the guys, etc. But one thing that I found is that when you're at our gym, New Wave, a lot of the guys have much more crossover in terms of the moves that they do than in a lot of other gyms. And so we follow, there's obviously differences in sizes, in style, in attributes and things like that. Some people are a little bit faster, more explosive.
What's a crossover move? What's that mean?
In terms of like, you see that there's a lot of
it's like there's a system.
There's a system in place that everybody is following that's similar, but each person has their own way of implementing that. Maybe their own ways, different ways that they like to chain techniques together, different details that they like to use. But there's a similar system. There's what I mean, there's like a lot of crossover in terms of the way that we approach jiu-jitsu. Whereas if you go to a lot of other gyms, you find that there's a lot of people have a lot of different games. One guy's a really good half guard player, another guy's really good at takedowns. And so there's kind of like, it seems as though like there is an environment in which you get a lot of guys that are tough and they're training together and they all kind of figure their own stuff out on their own and they find what they like and they just stick to that. And that's what, in the years coming up, I got to train at a lot of different gyms. And so I noticed that was one of the main differences that I found. And John doesn't really push anything outside of systems to us. So everybody has their own lifting protocol, sleep protocol, recovery protocol, if they even have it at all, though everybody eats differently. And so there's like a lot of individuality in terms of the way that everybody like lives their life. He doesn't really push anything like that on us, but there's a lot of crossover in terms of the way that we approach jiu-jitsu. And so, and he's very open-minded in terms of like creativity, and he'll always encourage people to be creative. And so he'll almost like lay out the blueprint, and he's like, okay, now you try to figure stuff out inside there, make it your own, and that's what I always really was drawn to that training environment, like from the first day, even from visiting them, but like from the first day that I started training there full time, I always really enjoyed that that way of training. So that's what I feel like I get the most, is that you could see that there's like an overall, like everybody's kind of working on the same things, and they're just, everybody's kind of like adding to it.
That makes a lot of sense. That's what happened at Westside Barbell. You couldn't necessarily just work out there. You were doing like the Westside program, and as you're pointing out, there was people with many different types of backgrounds and had to work on different things, but there was an overall system to the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say that, like, what would you say is the difference in the way that you guys think about jiu-jitsu and progressing in jiu-jitsu versus like other schools? Is there a way you guys look at it that you think is just different, which allows you to kind of work within that system?
Yeah, I think, well, one is the overarching kind of philosophy that John pushes, is that jiu-jitsu is a sport that is control that leads to submission. So ultimately, you should be looking to progress through a series of movements that ultimately lead you into dominant positions that allow you to finish your opponent. So that's just always going to be the emphasis, is that the best way to win a match is by submission, and he really emphasizes that. But also, like, John sees everything and he studies everything, and so there's never an area. There's always a new area of the game that we're working on, and even if it's something that we've already done, there's always something new that's being added onto that. And so you can tell that there's a lot of like intention to the way that he's teaching. And so I feel that for me, I've always wanted to be as well-rounded as possible. I want to be good everywhere. I know that's like a really hard thing to ask of yourself or of like any athlete, but like, why not try to have the best, case scenario, right? Shoot for that, and then, worst case scenario, you get close to it.
Yeah.
And so if I ever felt that I was neglecting an area of my game, I'll immediately try to go and start working on that and try to touch on everything. And so he's very thorough in that aspect, and makes it so that we have a system from every single position, and that's why we do positional rounds from every single position. And so that way you get a chance to actually work on those and spend time in those in a live setting but it's in a controlled space where you're spending as much time as possible in that area getting to work on your moves, et cetera, as opposed to, like we were talking about earlier, if we just roll, yeah, that's the fun part, but it's always the stuff you don't want to do that makes you better. And so when I roll with you, if we're similar in skill level, how long am I actually going to spend in a mounted position realistically if we roll for 8 minutes? But if you're tough, you know, now it's going to take me like 6 minutes to even probably pass your guard. And then, you know, then you're trying to escape the whole time, you're shelling up. And like, I might spend 30 seconds in a mount or a minute as opposed to spending 7 or 8 minutes every single day, you know, twice a day. And so that accumulation, I think, is what it's just, well, it's one of the elements I think that makes it different.
Gotcha.
What you got over there, Andrew?
Yeah, I guess I should probably apologize to the upper belts in the room and listening online because I got a bunch of white belt questions.
No worries.
Yeah.
I got no belt.
Yeah, well, okay. So I guess, well, you got a lifting belt, so that's something.
There we go.
So just, again, like how we were speaking in the store, you know, I have my first competition coming up in a month. So for competition prep for, let's say, white belts or just newbies in general, do you have a different approach for some of the guys that you've worked with when it comes to their, you know, either, again, early in their competition career or maybe even their first?
Yeah. My advice is always just don't change anything. Just go to the tournament and don't change the way you train. Don't change the way you eat for it. I mean, unless you're trying to make a specific weight class or whatever the case is. But for the most part, I think if it's your first tournament, regardless of what belt you're at, just go out there and just have the experience. So you shouldn't have to, like, so I have some students that are, you know, going into their first tournament. They're like, how should I train? And I'm like, the way we train every day. Like, you know, like, what do you mean? How should he train? And so, you know, I think a lot of people, especially when they're new to competition, they think that they need to do something different because you know, they put a lot of pressure on, like, you know, the event. So I would say just go out and just do the tournament. Train the way you normally train, you know, maybe a day before the tournament or two, rest or not, you know, see how you feel. And then in the next tournament you do, if you felt good doing what you did and you want to try something different, go ahead. Maybe you know, take a couple days off, or maybe if you took a couple days off, you didn't feel good, you train all the way up until the day of the tournament. And so I would say that the first most important thing is just doing it. And then as you do it more and more, you could start to make adjustments based on your own personal experience. But I wouldn't put much of an emphasis on changing anything or doing anything. Just go out, especially because you've only been training for 7 months, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, like in terms of like how long you will train or are capable of training, it's a very short amount of time. And so, like, I wouldn't put any unnecessary, I wouldn't add any like extra things. I think it's unnecessary. Just go out there and have the experience. And that's the most important thing. Don't change anything. Down the road, if you know you do more tournaments and you feel like you could do something different, then yeah, it's a different story.
Yeah, and then so like somebody had mentioned they're like, oh, whatever you suck at, just like keep working on that. And I was like, I don't even know if I have the ability to really understand what I technically do suck at. So I guess maybe I should ask somebody else, like my instructor. But I found that comment pretty interesting. But have you ever been asked something like that too, where it's like, where I need to focus on for this comp?
Yeah. I get that question all the time from, you know, my students, especially the newer ones, that they ask me, maybe not specifically for a tournament, but like, you know, what do you think I need to work on? And I always structure the classes based on around what I think the group as a whole needs to work on. And so I always, you know, reinforce that in their head. But I think if you're competing, you know, watching your own match footage, reviewing it with your instructor or teammates or whatever, rewatching it yourself, is a good way to see where you're at and what you can potentially work on, and also see what you're doing good. You know, like, oh, I'm pretty good. Like I hit a nice guard pass, or you know, whatever the case is. And so I think that that's definitely a good way that you can kind of gauge where are you at and what you need to work on.
Power Project family, your normal shoes are making you weak. This is why you partner with Vivo Barefoot Shoes, because they have a wide toe box, they're flat, and they're flexible. So with every single step you're taking, if you're taking a 10-minute walk outside or when you're working out in the gym, your feet are able to do what they're supposed to do in this shoe. They have tons of options for hiking, running, training in the gym, chilling and relaxing, casual shoes for if you're out on a date. You need to check them out. And Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at vivobarefoot.com/powerproject, and you guys will receive 15% off your order automatically. Again, vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Yeah, I film a majority of my training sessions, and we did a comp simulation round, and I was getting coached by one of the coaches, and he was calling out like a very simple thing, like, oh, you have his back right now. And then I had no idea, like, what do you mean? And then looking at the footage, I was like, damn, it was right there.
Yeah.
But in that moment, because it was like right before class, and who knows, maybe like 3 people were watching, but it felt like the entire class was around watching me. So like even in that moment, like I kind of got caught up in it, and I'm like, dude, the lights aren't even on right now, so it was kind of weird. So for both of you guys, because in Nsima, we talked about this where it's like, oh, like you got to like rest up in between matches, and you're like, yeah, I've fallen asleep before. And in my head, I'm like thinking about the tournament. I'm like, my palms get a little sweaty, I'm like, I'm trying to like, how am I going to calm myself down? I guess, does that just come with experience, or is there something else that you guys both do in order to kind of keep yourself calm?
For me, I always am going to put some degree of pressure on myself and have nerves. Like that's never changed. Even like I competed a week ago, or a week or two ago, and it was a small local tournament, and I fucking was nervous before. Like, it's just normal. And I competed like on the biggest stage in the sport. And so that I don't think that it can go away for some people. For me, I don't think it's ever going to go away. And I think that that's kind of a good thing to have, because if you're just not nervous at all, it probably means that you don't care about the result. But if you're too nervous, maybe you care too much. And so I think there's a fine line where you can be just kind of like the right amount, and ultimately just understanding where the nerves are coming from. Are you worried because maybe your family's watching you and you don't want to look like like crap in front of your family because they'll disown you or whatever? It's all like I was
like, he's been spending a lot of time at that place, and this is the result.
Wow. Well, that's why I started filming, because my wife was like, yeah, you talk about jiu-jitsu all day long, but I've never seen you once play jiu-jitsu, guy. And I'm like, all right, I'll start filming so I can show her something. But
got proof.
Are you really at jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where are you?
Who is jiu-jitsu? I spent a lot of time with this person. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Though.
Yeah, but it's all like it's all fake. Like, it's not like a real, and so like it's okay to feel that. Everybody feels it, I think, to a certain degree, no matter how much you portray, that you aren't nervous or whatever the case is. But I think it's normal, and just focus on the things you can't control. That's kind of like what I say. That's why I say, like, I can't control what the result is, but I can control the way I can perform.
Yeah, that's huge.
Do you notice any different type of pressure now that there's like a much bigger target on your back? Like, you're not a dark horse anymore, right?
Yeah, but like I said, it's all fake. Like, it's
fake.
just all me. It's all my own head. There's not like a real like pressure on me.
Yeah.
And so I just try to, like, what is it? Nothing's different about me. Nothing's different about my skills. If anything, they're just better.
Yeah.
And so, like, what can I control? Like, that's kind of like that's what I try to constantly remind myself of, at least. There's always going to be like a voice in your head. There's always going to be nerves or whatever the case is. But I try to constantly remind myself of, like, what is it that is important in order for me to achieve the thing that I'm trying to achieve. What's the problem that's directly in front of me at this moment that needs to be addressed when I'm competing.
You fought in the biggest tournament there is, and you won the whole goddamn thing. In that tournament, it seemed like jiu-jitsu has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years. It seems like a little bit like WWE-ish, where there's like it seems really entertaining. The crowd's into it. Everyone's all fired up. Do you have like entrance music and all that kind of thing? And what does it feel like?
So at ADCC, they did have music. We didn't choose the music, or at least I didn't.
Damn.
Yeah,
Maybe next time.
Had Bruce Buffer though. That was
I wanted to come out to Eye of the Tiger, and Galbao came out to it. But like I didn't get to choose anyway, so it didn't matter. But like he came out to it.
Does Gordon get to choose his music? Like, what's the order of operations over here?
Maybe for the super fight they got to choose their music, but I didn't get to choose. I didn't even know what was playing, honestly. I think they might have had like some drums. Yeah, I completely forgot what they even played. Yeah, but
this has got to be wild. I mean, you just go into like regular practices, like just doing your thing, head down. And I'm sure like at some of the national ones and international ones you've had, but like this got smoke and like.
Yeah, no, this was insane. This was like the best sporting event I've ever been to.
How sick is that?
Does this make you like nervous or just energize the shit out of you, or how's it feel?
I felt like for this particular tournament, I was really feeding off of like the energy of the crowd and just like the weekend in general. Like I was just very happy to be there, and we Gordon was in the super fight, so like our team had like their own like private warm-up area. The two super fight people did, so like their teammates would all be in there, and like so like all of our team was like in the back in the warm-up area, and like I was almost never there. Like I was out in the crowd watching all the fights, and just like I just wanted to be there for a couple of reasons. One, I like to acclimate to the noise, and I don't want to go from like dead silence to like lights and music and stuff like that. Yeah. But also like it was just such a cool spectacle to like be a part of, that I felt like as I was progressing through the tournament and doing better and better, and just being exposed to that and seeing like these were like fans that were like there for just pure enjoyment of the sport, was a really cool thing, because like we didn't have that until recently in our sport. And so it's just cool to see that you're getting that, like, you know, like it's like almost like it was like a UFC event or a WWE, like, you know, your people are there to watch. It's not like a tournament where like the people that are watching are also competing. It was like those people were there just to watch us compete. And so it felt very unique, and I was really happy to just be a part of it. So it was cool for me to, I felt like I did feed off of that energy, and there was obviously like nerves and stuff, but I didn't feel like it was any different than anything else. And I felt like if anything, it boosted up my performance even more.
Do you like see the crowd, or like when you're like actually in the match, you know, as different people have different experiences?
Yeah. I mean, you definitely, I tried to like stay, narrow my focus, like have kind of tunnel vision on what I was doing, but I definitely did hear the crowd at a couple of moments. And I remember at one point I was in the finals, when I was on his back, the crowd started chanting USA, and I was having a hard time like penetrating the neck, and then I was like, "Fuck! Now I have to finish this guy," because the crowd's like just cheering USA. I can't fail them.
Did you have it go the other way at all, like where the guy did something and the crowd cheered for him, and you're like, he didn't really do much to me?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I part of pro wrestling many years ago, I did this like tough man competition or whatever. It was a boxing thing. And the guy that I was going against, he was throwing all these punches, but I was blocking him and moving out of the way. And the crowd, it was at the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, and the crowd started chanting for him, and they're like making all this noise. I'm like, he's not doing anything. Yeah. And then luckily I caught him with a pretty good shot towards the end and was able to put him out of his misery. But it was actually really tough because I was blocking his shots, but I was like, how long is he going to be able to put this up for?
Yeah.
And I started to actually get tired. So even the low amount of punches that I threw towards the end, I was getting very fatigued.
Yeah.
But a lot of it had to do with the crowd.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
The crowd kind of took my legs away from me almost.
For sure, yeah. They
made me
sway,
nervous.
Yeah, for sure. It could sway you, and like a lot of the reason why people get tired in tournaments is just because of the nerves. Like sometimes you can go in the gym for an hour, but all of a sudden you do a match for 10 minutes and you're like fucking winded. It's like so that like that being able to like kind of control that adrenaline and like try to. It's the hardest thing to do, like especially when you're on a stage. But I think that's crucial, is to just take that and just try to eliminate that from affecting you.
Do you have any tips on how to control that?
Just again, like focusing on the stuff that matters. Like focusing on like what you're doing and allowing your brain to be engaged in the problem that is like at hand, which is the guy in front of you.
Yeah.
Not what the ref's doing, not what, people are saying in the crowd or his corner or whatever the case is. And you're going to hear it here and there, but you know, you got to try to like, okay, let me bring it back. You know, let me try to get back to what's important. Like there's a guy trying to pass my guard. Like I'm down on points or whatever the case is. Like, what do I need to do right now in order to solve this problem?
When it comes to sideline coaching, are your ears kind of like, first off, did you have, was Danaher yelling at things at you, and were you attuned to that, or were you just rolling and focusing on that?
Sometimes I can hear my corner, other times I can't. So I literally heard a single word that John said the entire weekend.
You didn't?
I heard one word.
One word.
Yeah, which was right at the end. I was locking up. I was trying to lock up the rear naked, and I was trying to lock a figure 4. And he told me, because he was right behind me. So he was like, okay, palm to palm, palm to palm. So then I locked it palm to palm, and that's how I finished it. Damn. That's like all I heard from him the whole weekend, because it was so loud. Yeah. And most of the time I was like far away. In my match, my second fight, Gordon was coaching me, and I was able to hear him a lot. It was a little bit quieter for whatever reason. And, you know, maybe I was a little bit closer. I didn't hear everything he told me, but there was a lot of moments where maybe we were stopped for a second, and like I could hear him coaching me. So, but it just kind of depends on, you know, where you are in the match. Are you guys moving in the middle of something, or, you know, is the crowd loud, or whatever the case is? Yeah. So
what makes Gordon Ryan in his mid-20s one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners of all time?
This question.
Well, careful with this one. Well, like I said, he was in my corner, right? And so like everything he was saying to me in the corner, and any time that he's ever cornered me, he cornered me throughout my entire trials one, where I won the trials to get into the tournament. And like everything that he would tell me that I would hear was just like money. Like it was just like on point, the perfect, the exact thing that I needed to hear at that moment to do whatever I had to do. Yeah. And so your confidence, John preaches this a lot. Confidence comes from, you know, knowledge, and so and skill set. Like, where's your actual skill set? And his skill set is just like his knowledge, and the knowledge that he has actually converted into skills is just, I think, miles ahead of pretty much anybody. You can ask him any question. The only person that knows more jiu-jitsu than him is John. And you know, and he's, especially for no-gi grappling, like he knows, you know, pretty much, you know, as much as John, or really close. And so he's just, you know, very, very skilled, and everything that he's done is incredibly precise. And you ask him any question about jiu-jitsu, and he knows like the answer. It's like, it's actually like unbelievable, like how much he knows. And so that, for me, like I got a lot better because of the knowledge that I gained, and how much of that knowledge I was able to convert into skills through training. You know, so that's kind of like the process. First you learn something, then you know, harness it, and you make it a skill. And I think that that's like the determining factor for anything. Like you can't really deny that in his career, especially the last, like, you know, 5 years, or like, you know, 60 plus matches that he's won in a row. Yeah. And so, I mean, if you watch somebody compete, even if you're new to the sport or you don't know much about it, you can tell when somebody is doing something intentionally and because they know like what they're doing, as opposed to just reacting, you know. And so that's kind of the case with him.
Will you have an opportunity to go against him? Is that anything you guys talk about, or is that anything that is possible?
We're in different weight classes. And so I'm minus 88 and he's plus 99. So we're 2 weight classes apart. I mean, our teammates have competed against each other. Sometimes you end up in the same tournament, same bracket, and we're pretty open as a team about competing against each other. Like, you know, and kind of the way that we approach it, or the way that actually Gordon said this, and it made a lot of sense, is like, if I'm going to lose to anybody at a tournament, I'd rather it be my teammate than somebody else. And if you don't want to face your teammate, then it probably, you know, you would want them to lose so you wouldn't have to fight them. So does that make you really, you know, a good teammate? And so at ADCC in particular, you have to face your teammates. You can only have 2 teammates in the same bracket, and you have to face in the second round.
Wait, you can only have 2 teammates in the same bracket, or the same weight class?
Yeah, in the same weight class.
In the same weight class.
So
really?
Yeah, so it's 2 per. I guess actually I take that back. So there's not I don't think you can only have 2. I think only in the absolute it's 2 per team.
Okay.
Because there was a case that in my weight class actually that there was 3 Atos guys, but so 2 of them went in the first round, and then the winner of that fought the other guy in the second round. So they make them go early.
Wow.
Because they want to avoid, one, they don't allow closeouts, which was a big thing, and IBJJF just changed that rule. But like the other federation, IBJJF, which is more towards the gi, they had an issue for a long time. It wasn't an issue, but like a lot of people didn't like it, is that like teammates would meet in the finals and then they wouldn't fight. They would flip a coin and say, okay, you take the medal and we both take a picture and we both say that we won because we met in the finals. And like nobody wants to see that, especially on the finals day. All the finals are happening, and it would be like out of 10 finals, like 6 of them were closeouts. Like, what's the point? And so they recently changed that rule, which was cool. But ADCC just doesn't allow that the teammates have to be in the second round. And so that you just avoid anybody trying to make fake matches or whatever the case is. And so it wouldn't be just him, but like if we were ever in the same weight class with any of my teammates, we'd have to go in the second round. And it's pretty open. I mean, I think like for the spectators, it's better. And whatever, if you train with your teammate every day, if you lose to them, at least be happy for them. I lost to my teammate in the absolute, so I won my weight class, and then I went to the open class right after, and I had to fight my teammate Nicholas Marigali. And so, I lost to him. He went on to get to the finals. So, I mean, whatever. I was happy for him.
When you are facing him, like when you, realize he won and you won, and you're kind of like, fuck. I mean, it's probably like a little bit of that because you know what he's got, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like it's competition at the end of the day. And so you have to kind of, put it aside for whatever, 10, 20 minutes that you're competing against each other. It was definitely like a weird feeling competing against him. It felt different than just a guy that I didn't know. But it is what it is. Just part of the game, I guess. You
mentioned Gordon's jiu-jitsu IQ being like, really high. Outside of training jiu-jitsu a lot, is there anything that you do or that he does that allows, someone to better understand jiu-jitsu?
Definitely, I think, studying jiu-jitsu can help.
In what way? Like instructionals or matches?
Yeah. Everybody learns differently, so it's hard to say one specific thing. For me, I get a lot of information in the classes. So, and then on top of that, when I train during the day and then I teach at night. So I'm like doing jiu-jitsu basically from the moment I wake up to the moment that I go to bed. And even then, like, you're watching stuff on Instagram or YouTube that's jiu-jitsu related. I'm always thinking about it. I'm always thinking about my training when I'm driving to training or I'm driving home from training. I'm thinking about how training went, what I got to do next time, so it's like constantly in your head. And so that's one thing that, that John also says to us is like, to be constantly thinking about jiu-jitsu even when you're not training. So you can only train for a few hours a day. That's what your body allows. But if you think about the sport, you can actually make a lot of progress just thinking about it. And so I think that like obsessive mentality where you're constantly thinking about the sport and ways that you can improve yourself or ways that you can train differently or how you trained and improve upon that. As long as your mind is in it, you will get better. Even when I'm injured and I can't train, if I've had an injury that had to completely take me out of the mat, I'm still thinking about jiu-jitsu. I'm still showing up to practice and watching, or I'm at home watching, and I'm just it's still in my mind. I'm improving. Even though my body's physically unable to do that, I'm gaining knowledge. And then when it's time for me to actually go back to training, I could start to hone that into skills. Gotcha. And so I think that's crucial.
Hey, Pat Roucher family, shut your f***ing mouth. No, not really, but kinda. You should keep your mouth shut when you're asleep. Now on the podcast, we've been talking about the importance of nasal breathing for years. And we've been talking about using mouth tape during your sleep for years, as it's going to help your sleep quality because you're going to be breathing through your nose. We had James Nestor, author of Why We Sleep. Actually, that was Matthew Walker, but James Nestor, author of Breathe. We had Patrick McEwen. We've had so many people talk about the importance of taping your mouth and breathing through your nose when you sleep for your sleep quality, which helps your recovery, which helps every aspect of your health and fitness. So, hostage tape. If you want to get some of this to help you sleep better, and it also stays on your face if you're a bearded man, which is one of the big problems with mouth tape, head to hostagetape.com/power project. And there you can actually get the Power Project annual deal, which will give you a year's supply of hostage tape. 55 cents a day for tape pretty much. And you'll be able to save $150 along with getting 2 tins, a year's supply of tape, and a blindfold. That is going to be something that you want to get your hands on. Links in the description along with the podcast show notes. Shut your mouth.
Is John Danaher a little weird? Like, does he, recommend philosophy books, or like, does he go into like giving you a speech?
He definitely doesn't. He doesn't recommend particular like philosophy books. What I always say is that there's nobody on the planet like John, and there never has been. But he's also just like a normal guy. So it's kind of like both. Like what he's been able to do, like just a regular person can't do. And he has an interesting story how he started jiu-jitsu late in life and things like that. But then there's also just a regular like elements to him that are just completely normal. Like people see him, on podcasts and stuff, and he talks about all these philosophical things but when you're with him day to day, he's just, a normal person. He likes to crack jokes, tell stories. He wears rash guards on the street. That's a little unconventional. But so there's, like I said, there's nobody like him, but he's also just a regular guy. Like he's like a normal guy from New Zealand. He's got like that sense of humor and but
he's relatable.
He's relatable, exactly.
That's cool.
But he's so unique in the way that he thinks and the way that he kind of lives his life. It's very, different than anybody else.
Do either him or maybe even Gordon kind of help you with the I guess because with Gordon he got so popular. I don't know how fast he got popular, but he's huge. He's the king as it's now his title. Has he or John helped you with that side of things of the business side of jiu-jitsu? Because you're doing it 24/7. There's a lot of people that probably wish that they could do that, but they have to do their 8 to 5. So you've made a career out of it. Are they helping you with the business side of things?
I think for me, I definitely ask questions and, based upon their experience. But in terms for us, the way that we make most of our living, most jiu-jitsu athletes, is going to be through teaching. And so really it comes down to, do people want to learn from you? And I'm pretty fortunate that, I started a YouTube channel a few years ago just to get my teaching out there and, just to be able to share techniques and insights and stuff like that. People started to like that. So I think people started to, associate me a lot with teaching, and they like the way that I teach. And maybe some people don't, but I think I do have a pretty good following in terms of people that like to learn from me. And so the way that we, make money, I guess to say the business side of jiu-jitsu would be, teaching seminars, teaching group classes. I teach regular classes at a normal gym. I teach, private lessons. I'll teach seminars, and then I sell instructional videos. And that's kind of the way that we support ourselves. And so each person, like I said, is going to have their own individual thing that people relate to. And so as of late, for me, people have been really interested in, my story because of the documentary, and because I kind of so to speak, came out of nowhere at ADCC. And so people have liked to see how I was able to improve my jiu-jitsu in such a short amount of time. And so I think that I can share a lot of insights, and people relate to that. How do you go from being a good grappler to being a great grappler? Or how do you go from being great to being the best, or whatever the case is? And so I've noticed in the time since ADCC that's been something that a lot of people have been inspired by, or have related themselves to me, and that kind of that helps me in that aspect in terms of teaching and doing seminars. And I got a lot of the same questions at a lot of different seminars, so you could see that there's a lot of crossover between people in general, in terms of the questions that they have or the struggles that they may face. And if I can help with that, if they relate to my my story or my persona or whatever the case is, and I can help them, I think that helps me in that side.
You said gi and no gi are like two different sports. And you, unless I'm mistaken, you came mainly from doing a lot of gi and then learning, like really getting better at no gi. So if somebody is doing jiu-jitsu, what do you think is easier? Is it easier to learn gi and transition and learn no gi, or like would it be easier going, because a lot of people are going straight no gi and then learning gi?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think overall, there are a lot of people that are doing just no-gi now or going straight into no-gi, but it's still mostly gi in terms of recreational practice. So most academies, it's changing a little bit in America. There's a lot more no-gi only academies. But if you go to Europe and like other countries that are big in jiu-jitsu, it's still mostly the gi scene in terms of like recreational practitioners.
Okay.
And then professional like competition is a little bit different. No-gi is still has more professional shows. Outside of like IBJJF and stuff that are putting on super fights and like, you know, paying athletes and things like that. But I think that for the most part, most people tend to start with gi, do no gi, you know, at whatever classes are offered at their gym. And then if they like that more, then they'll just do more of that. I don't think it's necessarily easier to transition from one to the other. It's just a matter of understanding what the differences are, because there's a ton of similarities. So if to the naked eye it looks similar, right? But like, you know, like people are grabbing a jacket, so there's a lot of like, you know, little details like that. But for the most part, the positions are almost all the same. You get the mount, you get the back, you're passing guard, you're getting takedowns. The techniques that you apply, there's a lot of similarities to them. There's still triangles, there's still arm bars, there's still strangles. But there are differences in the way that you apply them and in the way that you get to them.
Yeah.
And so easier or not easier, I think it comes down to personal preference, honestly. At the end of the day, it's hard to say one is easier than the other. Yeah, I think it's just kind of like what you enjoy more.
Do you think there's any ways in which they complement each other? Like I've heard Marigali mention like his top pressure is getting better. And I don't know, but I imagine maybe it's from no-gi top pressure.
Yeah, 100%. Like that specific aspect of like top pressure and control, because you don't have the friction of the gi.
Yeah.
And so if you can control somebody that's sweaty and slippery, then when you use those same techniques to control somebody who's in a jacket, you know, you have a lot more control and friction. And so yeah, there are definitely a lot of things that can cross over, because again, there's a lot of similarities, but they are ultimately different sports. One is like gi jiu-jitsu, the other one's, you know, no gi. You know, I get a lot of people, now it's being referred to as submission grappling, right? And so they are ultimately different sports. The way you attack the back or even escape the back in the gi versus no gi, it's different. Even though the kind of like overall principles are the same, the techniques and stuff that you'll use are going to be a little bit different because there's different weapons, different variables, things like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is there something else that you would like to pursue in the next several years, or is it mainly just head down jiu-jitsu?
In terms of like my athletic career, I think for the most part, jiu-jitsu. I do, and most of my goals right now are no gi, even though I still have things, I still want to compete in the gi, and I still have things that I want to do in the gi. I think no gi and ADCC take the priority, especially, you know, because of like the last year or so. But I do still like, you know, I train MMA to help my teammate Gary Tonin. I'll spar with him and I'll drill with him, especially when he's in camp for stuff. And I've always trained it on and off here and there. So, and also, you know, I just want to learn, because I do want to continue coaching as I get older and retire. And so it would be good to have that skill set so that I could coach guys in MMA as well. As far as like pursuing an MMA career, I'm not sure. I'm not completely closed off to the idea, but I have just so many goals in grappling that I still want to pursue, that I think that that would definitely take the priority. And if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it for real. Like I'm going to do it. I'm not just going to do it just to try it. And so if I was going to pursue MMA, I would pursue solely MMA. I wouldn't want to split my focus. You know, that's just me. And then, you know, I do want to compete in the gi. I'm just not 100% sure exactly what goals. I haven't quite set the goals, you know, in mind just yet. But it is something that I do plan on pursuing. Yeah,
if you had to pick one till the day you die, gi or no gi? If you had to, let's just put this,
putting you on the
Right
spot.
now, if I had to choose today, I would
had to
pick
choose
nogi.
today. Okay.
Yeah, I would pick nogi.
Okay.
What did you do when you were younger? Did you play a lot of conventional sports when you were young?
So I started, the first sport or activity that I can remember doing was karate, just at like a local dojo. Then transitioned to taekwondo, again, just like at a local school. I did some sports. I pretty much played mostly like, backyard sports, like with my friends. But anytime that I ever started playing like a ball sport, like a football or basketball or baseball or anything that I ever tried, I always lost interest in it, relatively quickly. Whereas for whatever reason, jiu-jitsu, the moment that I tried it, I felt like I just really enjoyed it. Like I always just liked doing it. And I never really lost that, enjoyment for it.
And you started that really young, like 12 years old or something.
Yeah, I was
right?
about 12 when I started. Yeah.
What do you think that did for you? Did you like as a younger guy? A lot of people, a lot of teenagers, especially, like really struggle with confidence and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Did you maybe have more confidence because you were doing jiu-jitsu, or were you just as lost as every other teenager?
I mean, maybe to some degree, I was just as lost as everybody else. But I always knew that I wanted to. I don't think I necessarily had like confidence issues. Maybe because I did other martial arts. But when I at that point in my life, like I wasn't like an unconfident kid that then started jiu-jitsu and got better. But I definitely think that it helped fuel that, and helped me, just helped with my overall personal development. Like, growing up, especially as a teenager, like starting at 12, and then, it's definitely good for any kid. I would recommend it. And that's just martial arts in general, not specifically jiu-jitsu, but I think jiu-jitsu is one of the better ones. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Was that one of your parents brought you to class or something like that? Or?
Yeah. My dad. So I went to school. I was going to middle school, and the jiu-jitsu gym was like 2 blocks down the road, and so we just drove past it one day, and it wasn't even open at the time. Like they were still just starting. Like they were just like constructing it. And we walked in, and then we got interested in it, and a couple months later we signed up, and then I would just like walk like after school.
Your dad did it with you?
He tried it for a little bit, but he never like pursued it.
That must have been kind of cool.
Yeah, but he did a little bit of judo when he was growing up. But my brother and I started together. So my brother actually still trains. He lives in Austin now, and he trains with us. He's a purple belt, and he competes here and there, but he didn't pursue it like as much as I did.
Younger or older?
3 years younger.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he just moved there, but he's always trained. We've always trained together. And my sister did it for a little bit, and then she stopped for a few years, and she just recently started training again. And so, yeah, me, my brother, and now my sister is starting to do it. Yeah.
Cool. It's in the family blood.
Yeah.
That's super cool. How about like for longevity though? Like, do you do anything now that's kind of just trying to, like I said, to extend out the life of your career? Like just in general, anything?
I'm starting to think about that more and more lately, in terms of like little minor injuries. Like even just now, like standing up, my back's been sore for like the last 30 minutes.
Oh shit.
No, it's okay. But just like little things, like, I have like small little things that will bother me, or like, if I train hard for a few days, so you wake up, there's stiff shoulder, stiff knee, things like that. So I'm trying to, I should say, I'm not actively, because I'm not the type of person that like warms up or does like physical therapy like on his own, stretches, foam rolls, does that kind of stuff. Like I was telling you guys before, like whenever I have like a small injury and like a guy gives me like a protocol, like do these exercises 3 times a week, and like the last thing I want to do after 3 sessions a day is come home and do more exercise. Like I'm just gonna lay down and just relax as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so like but I am trying to be a little bit more intelligent with the way that like I train, so that I can, because I do want to compete for a long time. I don't have like a date that I want to stop competing. Like I want to stop competing at this age, but I want to compete as long as I know that I can perform at a high level. And if I ever feel that I can't do that, then I won't want to compete. So I would like to extend that as much as possible.
Yeah.
So anything I can do to, like, any habit that I can form that would help me, whether that be, just I don't know, rolling on a ball before training or something small.
Yeah, the stuff I showed you today will help a lot.
Yeah, that's stuff that we talked about. Just like little things that you can add in. I'll definitely do that to try to extend it so I'm not like dealing with a problem that's, you know, accumulated over years.
Yeah, we've become addicted to it.
There's something I wanted to, oh yeah, when it comes to like the comments I see when it comes to like when guys see really impressive grapplers is, oh, they're just, you know, all these guys run a bunch of juice, etc. What do you think people are getting wrong when they think about like some of the drug use that is in grappling? Because ADCC does allow it. It is open. That they're very, you know, they're open about that. What do you think people are missing?
It's hard to say. Like, it is not tested in jiu-jitsu. I mean, there's one organization that tests, but they only test at one tournament, and they only test the winner on the day of with like a cup of pee.
IBJJF.
So, yeah, IBJJF. Yeah. And so, you know, it's not really, it's more of an intelligence test. And people still fail it, you know.
We saw recently.
And so, like, but like across all sports, it's undeniable that like that's just something that's gonna happen. I think what you have to realize is that if you've trained in any sport, whether it be powerlifting or whatever the case is, like to say that the only reason why somebody is good or great would be because of, you know, whatever that is that they took. It doesn't even have to be sports. Like people that play fucking poker, they just like, you know, they take Adderalls or like whatever the case is to improve their performance.
Yeah.
So when you're working at a high level, like ultimately everybody's going to be strong, tough, fit, or whatever the case is. So the actual determining factor for consistent success and dominance in a sport is 100% based around your skill set. And you can you know, make arguments for anybody, but like at the end of the day, it's a skill-based sport. Like if you can walk in to any jiu-jitsu gym with an ass full of steroids and you just walked in with no experience, and you take a 14-year-old girl and she's gonna fucking strangle you unconscious. That's like true. It's just the case. That's just how it is. And so
bullshit, bro. I'm gonna load up on trend. Awesome.
I see red, bro.
It's gonna be seeping through your eyeballs.
I'm gonna get so mad.
If I see red, bro.
Dude, I black out. It's like, yeah, you're gonna black out. Yeah.
Those corn
You're gonna
feds.
be out cold.
But in terms of like the physical performance, it's like we talked about before, right? So like this, if your technique is equal, then the stronger guy will win. So I think if in that element it can give you an advantage. Same way like in basketball, you know what I mean? Like if you take fucking like LeBron James, and if you take him completely clean, he's not going to perform the same way that he did in the beginning of the season. Towards the end of the season, your body's going to break down. And, you know, so it's like that with any sport. People are just trying to stay in it longer. But ultimately, like, it's the skill that determines, you know, who's the best.
Yeah.
You know,
We know he's natural, though.
I believe in LeBron.
Naturally gifted. Yeah.
Anything else, guys?
You got anything, Nsima?
Man.
We're tapped out?
Dude, I'm really excited for the seminar later today, dude. I'm really pumped. So thanks for making
it's gonna be
more
fun.
time for us. Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? On that note, like, how do you personally handle your recovery right now? I know that you mentioned you're working on that more, but do you try to get a certain amount of sleep? Do you pay attention to certain things?
7 hours of sleep to me is like the best. If I sleep 8 hours, I honestly feel a little bit more tired. And I don't like napping during the day. I feel, again, like if I nap, I just feel like I'm really groggy, and it takes me like 2 hours to like wake up again.
Yeah.
And so for me, like 7.5 hours is ideal for me to sleep. And this, like, if I don't sleep good, I just feel like terrible. And actually, like we were talking about like the CPAP before, like there was a while where my sleep was just really, really bad. And then I discovered through a buddy of mine who was my student at the time, he's a strong man. And he told me about getting a sleep study, that I might have sleep apnea or whatever the case is. And when I discovered that, and even then I was hesitant to do the study or to wear that machine, because I was like, I'm not going to wear that stupid thing. And I got the study, and then I found out that I had it. And then even there, I like waited like a year before I started using it.
Yeah.
And I was literally went from like dragging myself through a day where I was literally just like just dragging my feet through the day. Like training was awful. Everything sucked to within like 3 or 4 days, just feeling amazing. And
so you
like,
did have sleep apnea.
Yeah, I did have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have it still, and I use the machine. And like I encourage people to like actually, if they have problems sleeping, to just do a sleep study and see like what it is that you might have.
Did you do at home sleep study, or did you have to go somewhere?
Yeah, I did multiple at home ones, but I actually want to do, because at first I was like, oh, maybe this one's just like bullshit. So I did another one.
Go through a doctor or something like, because you have to get it like prescribed or sent to you, or
I didn't have insurance at the time, so I just went through
some dude at the gym.
Yeah. Well, so the one that my friend did, who's the strong man, and then I did some research and like found a different one. But I actually want to do one where you actually go to a place and sleep. I'd actually be curious to see if it's changed at all like since then, because this was like a couple of years ago. Yeah. But that helped me a ton. Yeah, diet I think is important, but I noticed that sleep and hydration too has helped me more than anything, like drinking. So I actively drink 6 liters of water a day with salt and like electrolytes. Like I always do that because I sweat like crazy, and I noticed that like if I don't do it, I literally feel more tired. And so like the difference between just having salt in my water while I'm training or before I'm training to not doing it was a huge difference for me. I think those are the things that like I noticed the most. Lately I've been trying to get more sunlight, so I'll do that more. But for me, like sleep is the most important one. I'd say hydration number 2. Food is kind of arguable, I think. Like I think it's definitely important for health and longevity, but not necessarily for like, performing well. And then I think maybe getting sunlight can help.
Probably surprises some people, but I agree with that. The type of food that people eat is like all over the map.
Yeah.
And people are still extremely successful. I mean, I guess you can make an argument and say this person would be more successful if they ate a little bit better, but you're like, well, the guy's like a world champion.
I eat the way that I eat just because it makes me feel good. Like makes my stomach feel good. I don't feel like overly bloated, but I don't necessarily eat that way because I think, if I eat this meal, I'll perform better. Because like you said, it's all over the map. There's some guys that live on freaking McDonald's and they're beasts and they can train for fucking 2 hours. And there's some guys that all they eat is chicken and rice and they perform well. So it's
chicken
like
and broccoli.
Chicken and broccoli, yes.
So I am curious though what you eat, because when Musa met, you mentioned like I eat pizzas all the time. People went wild. So what do you eat?
So most of my diet is centered around high protein. So I usually eat mostly red meat every day. Usually in some form of like ground beef or steak. So I would say that my protein source comes from almost exclusively meat and eggs. I also eat chicken here and there.
Weak bird.
Yeah. Occasionally I'll eat fish, but mostly I would say like 90% of the time it's meat and eggs.
There we go.
And then like rice, potatoes, fruits, pretty much everything, but I would say that encompasses about 80% of my diet. And then if I eat out, I get like sushi, or I'll get a burger, or I'll get whatever. But like when I'm eating at home, it's almost always like ground beef, which I love. I love eating ground beef. Eggs, things like that.
That sounds like my diet.
That's pretty much what I eat.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's the only thing I really try to track for the most part, is like I'm making sure that I'm trying to get a certain amount of protein intake in a day.
Good shit, dude.
Take us on out of here, Andrew.
Alrighty, thank you everybody for checking out today's episode. Sincerely appreciate it. Drop those comments down below. And real quick, shout out to Jake Jordan of the Academy and Outgrow for helping us out today with today's guest. I really appreciate that, brother. Thank you. Make sure you guys are following the podcast at MB Power Project all over the place. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, where you at?
Discord's down below. Ask all your questions there for the next Q&A at Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Giancarlo, what can people find you?
You can find me primarily on Instagram and YouTube. So I do a lot of instructional content and stuff on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram for just my regular day-to-day posts and to find out like where I'm going to be and when. And then, I sell instructionals as well on BJJ Fanatics.
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.
If you guys enjoyed this episode, Giancarlo Bodoni, you will enjoy this episode with Mason Fowler, another world champion grappler. Very good in the gi, very good in no gi. He's a beast, and this is a beast of a podcast. So click it over here. Click it and watch it. You're probably interested in jiu-jitsu if you finish this, so you should probably head over here right now.